Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
How you doing, Hayden?
I am bloody dandy.
Why are you bloody dandy? Why?
I'm bloody dandy because I played this little game last night.
Oh, yep.
Played this little game last night. You might have heard of it. Snooker.
Oh, I've heard of snooker. I don't know if I want to listen to the end of the story then.
I played snooker with Dylan. You might remember from last episode that Dylan's been playing snooker without me.
Well, the reason is because I ask you, do you want to play? And you go, yeah, sure. And then never ever go any further.
Yeah, right.
So.
Oh, I got other friends. Whatever. Guess who won? 2-1, me. So I've had it. I'm feeling great.
You played really well.
Thank you.
I thought you were going to go down a different route, which was that the 8-week term is over and it's half term.
And that's way less exciting than me beating you at snooker because I know how competitive you are.
Well, I went for a haircut. Anyone watching the podcast, you might notice or whatever, bit of a haircut going on. By the way, the kids, when you have a haircut and you walk in, the kids are obsessed with it, aren't they? Or you might not know.
It's preaching to the wrong guy here.
The kids are so cute. Anyway, I went to the hairdressers and I really like my hairdresser. He's a good lad. And I've been going there for a few years now, since COVID actually. Oh, yeah. He opened his hairdressers in February 2020.
Oh, mate.
The
I bet he was
worst.
gutted.
I was absolutely gutted. He was like within a month closed. Sorry, 6 months. Anyway, I went to get my haircut and he said, right, any plans then? Any upcoming plans? And I was like, well, actually, it's half term now. And his reaction was, what? Already? You've only just gone back. And I was like,
yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? I couldn't bother to have that conversation, which was like, actually, it's the longest time I think I've ever experienced in my life ever. It was a horrible 8-week time you've ever seen. But I've seen a lot of that from people. Yeah. Already? I'm like, oh my gosh, just hold it in, Dylan. It's okay. Just nod and just take your week off. Because it's nice having a week off after 8 weeks.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't think people realise just how incredibly intense 8 weeks.
I can see that he took it out on your hair. He thought, this guy, I can see it. I can see that bit of your hair. Oh, there it is again. That's it. Keep looking at me because anyone watching can see that.
Right, this is my fault. Where I am at the time.
Sorry, we're at Wingham. Anyone doesn't know where that is? It's a Wingham Wildlife Reserve. A throwback to a very old episode. There's a peacock here.
Yeah, a peacock. Well done. At the back of my head, I have the crown. My crown. My hair grows just out directly towards like a sunflower going towards the sun.
You have too much hair. I know. Like your hair is so dense.
It can't fit, so it just grows out, and I look like I'm presenting myself as a peacock.
Anyway, other than your hair.
But anyway, that was the main thing. Was it's half term now? I'm quite excited by that. Did you have much going on this week in the last week of term?
Actually, had a really, really nice week. And
was it because of snooker?
Snooker was like the icing on the cake.
Okay, what was the cherry? Was it doing this podcast with me?
The cherry on the icing on the cake was the school trip that I went on.
Oh, okay.
And I know you love school trips as well. And
I do.
It's just one of those things where they're a ball ache to organise, aren't they? Let's be honest. Like school trips, they're not just like come on kids, let's go here today.
It's easier just to do your normal day.
Be much easier, right? But I just love school trips because I love seeing the kids really happy, and they're always really happy. Obviously, because it's like, do you want to do maths and English all day, like you do every single day of the year, or do you want to go to see a bunch of planes? So we went to like a museum, RAF Manchester Museum, which is really, really cool. They got tons of planes, and they're like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's go look at some planes. And then you get there, and then we're like, do you want to go and sit in some of them? They're like, sorry, what?
Some of them said they sat in them. They came back and they were like, I sat in the plane and pressed all the buttons.
Yeah. So this place is lovely. RAF Manchester Museum, if you're ever around that area, visit it because they're really lovely people there, run by volunteers mostly. They got loads of volunteers in because they knew we were coming. Just to man basically all the planes that they could open up the little cockpits for. Oh. They just had volunteers in. So then it was like, go on then, in you go. And they were like, what? I can go inside that plane. Yeah, you can go and sit. Can I sit you can sit at the controls.
So
can
cool.
I switch things? Yeah, you can switch things. Oh. And they just loved it. We had such a good day and just walking around, looking at planes, getting on a helicopter as well. Obviously, it didn't fly, but it was like an old rescue helicopter. So all the kids could get on. We had a group of 10 and we're all sat in there and they're giving us like a pep talk, like, okay, we're going on a mission. It's just such a good time. I just love it. And every single time I do a trip, I'm always like, I should do this every week.
Yeah, yeah. As much as possible. Yeah. COVID rinsed it, didn't it, for a lot of schools, a lot of people. Time. Just where you couldn't do the trips anymore, and then it's so easy to get back into the rut of just, let's just do what we're doing, stay in the school and not bother. But trips are transformative.
Have you got just on the spot here? Have you got a favorite trip? Like, does any school trip come to mind? Either that you went on as a kid, or more realistically, one that you've taken kids on.
Oh, okay. As a kid, I can remember loads. I think that's why I find them lovely to do. Because as a kid, I remember going to watch The Lion King. I would have been year 4. I think it just come out.
Oh, no way.
Literally just come out because I think it's like 20 odd years now.
That is cool.
Went to watch The Lion King. Also, my primary school, we went to the Natural History Museum. best day ever for me. I was like unreal to walk in and see the dinosaur. I was like, that was my favorite thing I've ever done. And then I think of secondary school. We went residentials. Well, my year 6 residential, I remember that. So that's 3 trips from my primary school. I remember residentials we did in our secondary school. You would have probably done the same ones to Saint-Omer in France.
I didn't go. But yes,
but that was the thing we did every year. I went to Iceland. We're lucky enough to go to Iceland on the geography trip when I was in year 10. That is the probably the best trip I've ever been on.
Yeah, didn't go on that either.
It was really good. And then as a teacher, I've not done many actual trips. Like we've done things like where you do like an experience day. You might go to this park or something where they dress up in Victorian clothes.
Yes, that was coming to my mind. That's like my favourite one.
That's unbelievable. It's so good because it's so engrossed. Do you know what? Do you know 2 things that make a good trip?
Go on.
One, obviously, when the kids love it and it's relevant and they're excited and they want to do their learning in a different way, which is actually fun and engaging. The second thing, selfishly, from a teacher's point of view, is when experts just crack on with doing it.
I know.
And with this, like, it's called Kent Life, I think. So anyone in Kent, I'm sure you're aware of this, but you go to Kent Life for the day. And we've actually just booked it, I think, for our year group to do it this year.
Oh, cool.
So we're going to go. And these experts basically they're in costume. They're in character. They run workshops. All you need to do is ferry the kids around. And the kids just have a cracking time with these experts who I couldn't do what they're doing. And the kids are so engrossed. They do loads of different stuff. They learn. And do you know what doesn't happen? They get back and have to write it in their book.
Yeah,
don't worry about it. Just enjoy. You've done your learning.
You
have
always,
a cracking time.
I remember as a kid, you always knew a trip was about to go from a 10 to a 3 when the teacher gave you a clipboard on the coach, and you think, I don't want to do I don't want to do any clipboard writing.
It's so true.
I just want to enjoy the trip.
We need to evidence it. We need to evidence it in the book because if we don't evidence it, then we didn't go on this trip, did we? We didn't go on this trip that you really enjoyed. You're going to remember forever. This trip that you're going to remember when you're 31 doing a teacher podcast and you actually remember all your trips, but you didn't write it down on the clipboard. What are we going to possibly do? Oh. Jeez.
Yeah. So I try not to do that. I very much try to just be like, can we just enjoy it?
Yeah. Just press the buttons on the plane.
However, however, we did go on the trip the other day. For the first time in 3 years I've been doing this trip, they did offer a quiz. They were like, would your kids want a quiz going around? I was like, give them a quiz. I'm just not going to remotely force them to do it.
Exactly.
And then,
they probably loved it.
Some of the kids really enjoyed it and they went around finding all these facts. Most kids did one question, the novelty wore off, and then the clipboard just stayed in their hands and ended up in my hands.
For those kids who wanted to do it, brilliant.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Nice.
Anyway. Anything else with your week?
Well, I think I was kind of channeling them my inner breakdown because I've been having a few this week. Do you know, we post memes and stuff on our Instagram at Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast. You want to go and follow us. And one meme that does particularly well is if I ever do anything about the printer, the photocopy. And I know it's a joke, like, haha, photocopies are frustrating, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But actually, no, this happens to me in real life. And you happen to be in the room. And I just got to the point where after, honestly, I think about 20 times in a row that I've gone to use the massive photocopier, it immediately, the first time anything comes through to print, printer jammed, remove the paper from the print. I'm like,
turns into a donkey and then it gives you some errors. Yeah.
It pops up like, printer is extremely hot. It's been off. Yeah, I just turned it on. I got an early to do my printing. I've just turned this printer on. Why is it broken? And then every three bits of paper, it just jams again. It really gets to me right now.
I know.
Like more than it should. And I understand that
because it really set me up for a good day. It made me. Your misery amused me because I was walking through the school. I was just getting into school, just walking through the door, signing in. Boop boop.
10 minutes before you got to teach, as you always do. Someone else will sort my stuff out.
No, and all I could hear was you raging, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a treat." So I went in to have a look, and you're just like, "Oh, there's printer." Just having a complete meltdown. It was just really funny.
I know it's quite childish, but it's also really frustrating because I've got so much stuff to do, and I'm just spending another 10 minutes at the printer every day trying to pull out paper.
I laughed until I had to use the printer. Honestly,
did the same thing happen?
20 minutes later, and it did.
Of course it did.
It jammed. I was like, is it jammed? Because you haven't printed one single sheet yet. It's jammed. Okay, I'll take the jam out. Next sheet, second sheet. Guess what that did? Jammed, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I can see. I can see
Can we
the problem
just
here.
Maybe fix that, please? I don't know how. I know printers are awful.
The guy came in that day to fix it. I saw him. And
got the rollers in.
I was like, "There we go, fixed it." That afternoon, I used it. It didn't work, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
At what point do we just blame the printer company and say your thing doesn't work? Why do we all accept printers are awful?
I know. I think we need to go back in time and use the old What
overhead projector?
No. The overhead projector, or if we need to make worksheets, you get a bit of ink on a template, print it down onto a bit of paper.
Are you talking about printing press?
Printing press, that's the one. I couldn't think of the word. Printing press. The printing squishy thing that goes down like that. That's the name. Get them back out.
You need to go on a trip to see a printing press. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two about them.
History trip. That's what you did your degree on, wasn't it? Printing presses.
Brilliant. Whenever anyone mentions my history degree, they think they can point to any point in history and go, you did that.
You did a dissertation on that, didn't you?
Didn't you do that?
Wow, really good degree that.
Didn't you do Albanian history from the year 600 to 400 BC? Oh,
clearly
Albania wasn't even a country then. You'll know that because you did a history degree. I don't know everything ever.
I do love how vast history. It's like all of it. I learned everything that ever happened ever in my 3-year degree. Actually, I'll have you know.
Quantum mechanics, really specific part of maths. Got a degree in that.
Yeah.
The history of everything.
Yeah. Funnily enough, quantum mechanics happened in the past, so I guess you learned about that. We discovered that back in the 1900s. So tell me more. Anyway, Dylan.
What is the past, Hayden? But the present.
Yeah.
Just already happened.
That's nice. That's wise, that was.
It was.
We should have done the jingle right there.
Was that profound? Let's move on. Let's get on to the actual cracking bit of this episode, shall we?
Yeah.
Did the strikes achieve anything, Hayden?
Will education ever be fixed?
I just don't know anymore. I just don't know. We're recording this episode and we know exactly what we want to talk about, but we haven't yet decided the name of the episode.
No.
So it could be one of a few things. But the gist is, we just had a moment of reflection, didn't we? I mean, we were talking recently and we thought back to the strikes.
Yeah.
And the reason we started this podcast...
Yeah, I was going to say, when we started...
Yeah, it was literally because we were striking. Yeah. And the first episode was, why are we striking? I wanted to just break down those misconceptions about teachers, etc. The strike action ended. People have voted through the various pay rises and stuff, blah, blah, blah. But it just got me thinking, has anything actually changed in this job? Has it remotely got better? Have the, aims of the strikes been met?
Yeah.
And I honestly think the answer is no.
Well, let's break it down, shall we?
Yeah.
Because I think it did some stuff.
Sure.
I think the strikes did some things, but I don't... Maybe we can talk about it, but I don't think perhaps it was really worth it. Maybe?
Okay, I'm going to try and narrow you down before we break it down to start you off. On a scale of 0% to 100% fixed. Okay. So 0% fixed, nothing. It's exactly the same as it was. 100% fixed, everything that we possibly had gripes with and strikes for and reasons why education's in the doldrums has been completely sorted. What percentage score would you give it 2 years later?
I'm trying not to exaggerate too much and just be honest. I think
0.1%.
Honestly,
I'm gonna not exaggerate.
I think 5%.
Yeah,
5%. I think a really, really, really low number.
Yeah,
maybe I think about 6.5% fixed.
Oh, I wonder. That's very interesting. Why exact number? Yeah, I agree. I honestly, if you were to pick me up from January 2023 was when it happened. Yeah,
something like that.
January, February. And then look at me now in October 2024, nearly 2 years later.
Yeah.
I don't think anything has changed.
No.
Because, well, let's break it down. We'll talk about what the strikes actually achieved first because I think that's important. If we're giving it a 5% score, that's quite harsh. So maybe as we go through what the strike did actually achieve, we can maybe look at that number and reassess, or choose not to, because then afterwards what we can go through is what did the strikes not achieve?
Yeah, that we were trying to achieve.
Exactly.
What did the strikes fail to do?
Yeah. Okay. So Hayden, hit us with, in your opinion then, because you were very much more realistic than me, I think, when we talked about this. You said, well, no, actually it did do this. What did the strikes achieve then, in your opinion?
Okay, so I think the biggest optic of the strike, and the thing that maybe the public thought the entirety of the strike was about, right? The only thing was about teachers getting a pay rise.
Sure.
Because we were on track to have to go into another stagnant period, weren't we?
I think 2 to 3% was thrown around. Yeah. At the point of like 15% inflation.
Yeah. Inflation was crazy, and we've just done about 10 years of.
Yeah.
What's it called? 10 years.
Well, of no pay rise.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Pay freeze. That's what it was. Yeah. And there were talks of doing a pay freeze again as well as this. Right. And it was just like everyone was just annoyed. So the one thing that I'd say the strike did achieve was we got a bit more of a pay rise than we were going to get. It wasn't even the full amount really, because I think we were gunning for a lot higher to be in line with inflation. Yeah. And we settled on, I'm pretty sure it was 6.5%.
Yeah, it was the first year. Yeah.
6.5%.
Gillian Keegan reluctantly, I think.
Yeah. And then the following year, so this year that we're in at the moment, is a 5.5% pay rise.
Which was voted through heavily in favour from the NEU.
Yeah.
The NEU put a ballot out and said, do you accept this? And the most people by far said, yes, I accept it.
Yeah, because you know what? People don't actually want to strike.
Yeah,
not really.
completely.
Because at the end of the day, it costs money. People forget that, I think. It's like, yeah, you're on strike, so you don't get paid though. We didn't get paid. All those days off we had, we didn't get paid for that.
Yeah, £100.
I don't really want to strike again. Do you know what I mean? So even if 5.5% seems like, oh, that's a win, I think a lot of people were still like,
not really.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't really want to go on strike again because you know what? The public hate us more than ever now.
Yeah. I must say, on this note, quickly, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth to me when we kind of all just accepted this 5.5% this year, the second lot of, and that's great, don't get me wrong, but it was a little bit of a kick in the teeth to then see other public sector workers get honestly like 22% pay rise. Like junior doctors, I think are unbelievably underpaid. I think they are amazing and they deserve more money than a teacher. Let me get that clear. We live in a society where people get paid different amounts for the jobs they do, and it's okay to say that junior doctors do an unbelievably hard job, work extremely difficult conditions, and completely deserve their 20
huge
20+%.
requirements to even be at that level.
Yeah,
like,
and then the stress of the job day to day. Let's just be realistic. Me teaching children how to round and them saving the lives of people and doing diagnosis, it's incomparable. Right? It is, and that's okay to say. And they deserve their pay rise, and they're on their route to restoration.
I agree.
But it's a percentage. They're on more already, and they should get a percentage pay rise. The percentage should be pretty close, though, in my opinion, to what teachers should get as well.
Yeah, because it's proportional.
Exactly that, and then the percentage is to do with restoration and it's to do with inflation and stuff. So yeah, you are right. The strikes, without the strikes, we wouldn't have got a 6.5% pay increase.
Yeah, so that's a big one. That's one of the bigger optics. I think one of the other things that came from it, because we've talked about it a lot, is it did spark the workload reduction task force. Go back to our previous episodes. It's in the title where we've looked at what that document was from the government, right? And it was quite an extensive list that included a list of administration tasks as well. And we went through all of that. Things that we shouldn't do, teachers shouldn't be doing, right? Okay. And it was this attempt from the government to say, actually, okay, let's have some policy then, top down. If you want to change all the workload's a real problem, which to be honest with you, hint to people that aren't in teaching, that was realistically the main reason people were actually striking was this job is completely unmanageable.
And funding and stuff.
Workload is getting crazy. Yeah. Funding was the third one I was going to come to. But people were like, this job is crazy. Yeah. Like, we can't do this anymore. The workload is mad, mainly because the funding is so bad and it's all just fallen on us. We need some help with the workload. So we did get the Workload Reduction Task Force, and it is now an active document on the government website.
Yeah, I feel like I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here. I hate that saying, but I agree with you. That did come from it. But then we look at the Workload Reduction Task Force, that list of administrative tasks that teachers shouldn't do, it was actually just a harp back to the pre-austerity era, where that list was just taken away, basically. And a lot of people who've been in teaching for that long say, this list is great, but this list existed. And it was scrapped and left to schools to decide what amount of work is acceptable during the austerity periods. And that led to obviously increase in workload. And then during a time where pay was stagnant, resentment increased, recruitment got worse, retention got worse. Like it's great, again, like that restorative approach of like, okay, we'll put this back in place, which is all it was really. Again, good. We did get that from the strikes. You're right. I can tick that off. Yeah. Maybe we can talk later about how much impact does it actually have? But I'll give you that one. The strikes, I think, did play a part
restorative
in that effort to introduce this list again. So, okay, I'll give you that one.
I really like the idea that the government were like, yes, we are going to restore. And everyone's like, oh, what, the pay? You're going to restore the pay? You're going to restore the pay back? We're going to get like a 15% pay rise. You're going to go back to what it was. We are going to restore the list of things you shouldn't be doing. So there is restoration going on.
What you want pay restoration? Yep. And you know what? We're going to give you the restoration of the fact that you don't have to do bulk photocopying.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So
I'm so glad I struck. I'm so glad I struck.
I was so glad I struck to get this list back.
Sorry, I'm being horrible. Hayden, anything else on the list? Okay. What did the strikes achieve?
Right. So
it's a very long list. Two things.
I was like, well, two things. We've got the pay. We've got the reduction task force list. We've got the document, the policy.
Back.
But also, I think this has come from the strikes. I think it may be some other elements as well, but the Ofsted is being reformed.
Sure.
That is kind of happening at the moment. Ofsted will be reformed. I think there's been talks of that for a few years anyway. Ofsted has been it's been the talk of the town, hasn't it? Quite a bit across schools for a couple of years.
And a lot of things have happened that have contributed to this conversation. The Ruth Perry incident.
Yeah.
There's lots of stuff going on where I don't necessarily attribute that to the strikes.
But I think
on
that
its
strikes
own.
fueled it. I think strikes has kind of like solidified this idea of okay, well, Ofsted isn't working. It doesn't work. So it has kind of like kickstarted and got that moving. Reform.
And do you know what it did achieve?
Yeah.
It made my pay packet lower for a few months when I was striking.
Yeah.
And then my increase in pay has probably just about made up for it since. So I'm base level at the minute. So that was good.
Pessimistic, Dylan. But what about every year afterwards?
Well, then, yeah, that's brilliant. Cool. Still less than it was. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, brilliant. The strikes did achieve something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is, I'm not going to deny that because we got more of a pay rise because of it.
So are we going to change our number from 5%?
I don't think so. Maybe listeners could tell us what their percentage is as well. I'd love to know what percentage fixes education after striking. To me, it's such an infinitesimally small amount because of this list that I've put together, which will now take probably 7 times as long as your list.
Yeah.
Which is
7 times 5 is only 35% more. So there's a bit of a shortfall here, Dylan.
All right, we'll see. Yeah. Here are things that I would say have not changed, which was at the forefront of my mind when I was striking, and I'm sure many other people's. That part of this list, you might listen and go, well, that was nothing to do with the strikes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about my opinion of why I felt it was time to go and strike. The list is never ending. And I still do, I really do think that nothing has actually changed. And after we go through this list, we'll talk about what we think is the best thing, one thing we could do.
Okay. So we'll finish it with a bit of positivity.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Let's go through. All right, you're going to start the list then.
Yep.
Things that haven't changed despite striking in schools.
Yep. Number 1, horrendous SEND provision and funding. That comes to my mind immediately. And the reason I put funding in there is because you're right. When we did go on strike, there were 2 prongs to it, 2 main prongs to striking, and it was both to do with funding. And they were both equally important. And the media picked up on our want for a pay rise and tried to demonize us because of it. Yep. But alongside that, and honestly, if not more important to most people striking, was funding for schools. Not to put in teachers' pockets, but to fix the crisis that we have every single day in school in about 7 different areas. And the number 1 area for me is SEND provision and funding. That is the number 1 impact on me as a teacher that I have, is the lack of funding, the lack of help, the lack of care. If I was to whittle it down to the job of a SENCO, SENDCO, however you want to say it, the person who's in charge of these children in school, they are at breaking point for so many reasons. Number 1, they're trying to help too many children with no funding whatsoever. They can't do it. It's impossible. Number 2, they are very often, a SENCO is doing another job in school. They're very, very rare do you find someone who is just the SENCO for one school. If they're in one school, maybe they're the SENCO and the assistant head teacher. Or they also have a set of maths in the morning, or they have some teaching responsibility. You can't have that in this day and age with the amount of needs that we have, or the needs that we're finding and we're being diagnosed now more than ever. Or they are just a SENCO, but they might work in a trust and they're across 3 or 4 schools. And they have thousands of children that they simply cannot support properly. And filtering it down even further, from my point of view as a teacher, I see that from the SENCO. I feel horrible for them, but then it's passed on to me to solve in my own class, where I might have 3, 4, 5, 6 diagnoses of children who absolutely need support and help, and I can't give it to them. From my point of view, that's not changed remotely because of the strikes. And that's a big thing that's contributing to burnout and stress in teachers who just want to help people. That's what we want. We want to help these children, and we physically can't do it.
A big problem with the funding, just thinking about the funding, because I actually didn't do it justice earlier when I mentioned how we were striking for pay rises because it had been stagnant for so long. A big part of this problem that was never really put into the media properly was that it wasn't just that teachers wanted more of a pay rise and like they weren't getting anything, because they were getting like, a couple of % each year. But the problem was it wasn't funded. That was like the biggest part of it. It was like we want it to be fully funded, because what's happened over the last decade is the government was like, yeah, all right, then you can have a bit of a pay rise. No more money though. And the school's like, sorry, what do you mean by that? They're like, yeah, just reshuffle. Reshuffle. Just move your money around and find the pay rise for the teachers. Okay. So I'm going to employ a one less TA then. Is that what you're saying? So if I have to pay the teachers, but I have to take the money from somewhere else. So the biggest problem, and this is what has happened with SEND so badly, is the money's gone. Like it got, there was a pot of money for SEND, And the government are like, oh, take some of it for this. Oh, okay, well, now we've got take some of it for this now. Oh, well, now we've got a smaller pot. It's like, yeah, just take some of it. I'm not going to give you anything. We just want you to use the money you've got and just put it elsewhere.
And now it's down to you how you use your money. So it's actually not our fault at all.
Yeah. And what happened is, obviously, there's just no money left in any of the pots in school. And SEND is in a dire state.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think it's... I can't emphasize your points enough. I think it's so bad. If you speak to anyone in education right now, it's at critical breaking point. Children's needs are not being met.
No.
I'm not afraid to say that. Are some children's needs being met? Of course they are. But are there lots of children's needs who aren't being met adequately? Definitely across the country. Thousands and thousands of kids are going without the support they need.
And that is directly contributing to the conscience of the teacher. Why is the teacher in the classroom? We've said it a million times. It's obviously not just pay. When we talk about pay and wanting an increase in our pay, we're talking about just wanting to be where we were. Yeah. We're not talking about wanting to become a millionaire. We didn't get into teaching because we think we're going to become rich from doing it. We just want to be able to sustain a family in this modern society, right? So if we're a teacher, it's fundamentally because we care about the children. And what we're seeing with our own eyes and witnessing every day is just eating away at us and our conscience, because we're seeing children in general as a whole profession who aren't getting what they need, like you said. And that is going to have an effect where you've got a choice to make at the end of the day. Number one, you accept it and you feel awful.
Yeah.
Number two, you burn yourself out trying to do what you can for all these children, and it's physically impossible and it's a never ending job. And it ends up with you leaving the profession or being burnt out or having a breakdown.
Woo!
That's where we're at. And my overall point here is that did not change. And that has such a bigger impact to me than someone writing a list that already existed 10 years ago and saying that I no longer have to organise a trip.
Yeah, exactly. So actually it outweighs, I joked about 5%, 35%, but you know what? This is a huge chunk of, and a lot of people were striking for this.
Yeah.
And it did get banded with just funding.
Yeah.
But really a lot of people were striking because they're saying the funding's bad and loads of kids are suffering in my class. So can we stop that? Yeah. Can we have more funding for that, please?
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Well, linked to funding is the next thing on my list really, which is just the acceptance of the amount of children in each class. It's become normal to say 32 children in my class. Now, I know across the country, some people listening to this podcast right now might even be thinking, well, I have 28 in my class or 26 even. But it's becoming more and more normal in your classroom to have 32 children. I have never had fewer than 32 children in my class. No. I've had 32, 33, even 34 sometimes. And I think we really need to strip it back and just forget everything that we say is, it's just how it's always been. Just get rid of all of these preconceptions we have about what's normal.
Yeah.
Having 32 7-year-olds in front of you in a room, all with individual needs, with no support and just you as a teacher, it is insane that we think that we're going to get amazing outcomes for each child in that situation. Yeah. What are your thoughts on class size?
I think class size, I think it's just expectation. I think it's like, if we're all happy as a culture and a country, if we're all happy to be like, yeah, we just give pretty bad provision to these 32 kids, and we're like, yeah, and then we're okay with that. It's like, all right, then that's what you want. That's what you've built. We have 32 kids, and they are getting a very subpar education because of it. But really, no one thinks that. It's like, well, we all actually don't want that, do we, really? So let's stop being like, well, this country has 40 kids in their class.
Honestly.
Have you heard about Australia? Have you heard about Indonesia? They have that. So, okay, I honestly don't care. I genuinely don't care. It's like, okay, that sounds dreadful. That sounds even worse. And also, I don't know all the nuances to what they're doing. There's probably loads of other elements that change those things. They got 40, they got 6 TAs. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or they're in a culture where the children are of a level where they don't have as many needs, because they have a culture where maybe they have schools that are special educational schools that are properly funded, and their children go
a lot
there.
more differentiation through school or something, or class. I don't know.
Or it is dreadful and worse.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be worse. Cool.
Yeah.
But you know what? Just because something's worse doesn't mean I'm going to shut up and say that this bad thing's okay now.
Take what you're given, mate. Come on, stop
race
moaning.
to the bottom.
Some people got it worse. Exactly. We always talk about this race to the bottom, and we just need to stop doing it. It's so toxic. If you do that, stop it. If you know someone else that does it, tell them to stop. Say, just because someone else is worse doesn't mean we're not in a bad situation, and see what they say.
Exactly.
So I think 32, I really genuinely think 32 kids in a class, probability-wise, the chances are it's going to be dire.
Yeah.
I think you can get lucky. I think there are probably teachers listening to this thinking, I've got 32 and actually it's not so bad. You know what? You're probably just quite lucky that maybe you don't have 8 kids on EHCPs who all have really individual needs, and you just can't meet them.
Yeah, that's tricky. And I've spoken to...
It's a dangerous game.
I've spoken to SLT about this in the past. People who are literally making decisions to add children to the role. Mm-hmm. And I've spoken to them about it, and they don't want to do it. But each child comes with X amount of money.
Yeah.
That the school get through funding. I think it's about £4,000 roughly, let's say, give or take, per child that you take in. That's how much more funding your schools gets to meet their needs. If you cut class sizes from 32 down to 24, right? That's 8 children. That's about 32 grand. That's someone's job. So you've got to make a choice then, because of the dire situation of funding, which by the way is why we went on strike, directly because of the lack of funding, we're getting either a choice between 24 children in your class, but we lose even more support, or 32 children in a class, you still don't get support with a TA, but the TA can be bought for something else in the school that's needed, maybe running groups or something.
I was about to say, I was hoping you were going to say you either get 32 kids in a TA or 24 kids without one. And the actual dire reality is we're already at the part now, we're already long gone from that, because that's what it used to be. We're now at the point where it's 32 kids and no TA. Or you could have maybe 40 kids in a TA. That's probably the next option, isn't it? Like, we're already at the dire situation of the worst of both.
It's what you said about stuff being taken out, isn't it? Slowly over time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we needed that more funding. It's not fully funded. 6 years down the line, no one can have a TA anymore. Our TAs aren't that important. You'll get on with it. No, they are.
They're vital.
They are. They're really, really vital. And if you happen to have a kid that just needs one-to-one support in your class and you don't have a TA, what are you going to do? You're just basically going to stand there. You're going to try your hardest to do something for them. It's probably not going to be objectively good enough.
And what are the other 31 children doing at this point?
And you're going to feel terrible. I don't know. I think we're being very negative right now, but
no.
I think
it's important.
It has to be through the lens of...
It's honest.
Yeah. Honesty and genuinely just what these kids need. And that is at the forefront of everything. Really.
Who's going to fight for these kids if we just pretend it's all okay?
Yeah,
honestly,
we'll crack on, chin up. Come on, chin up.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Shoulders, mate.
But they are literally not getting what they need, and that eats away at me. It eats away at me, honestly, all the time. And I just think this is a losing battle, and nothing changed because of the strikes. We're still in that situation where this is a huge part of my job that affects me every day that has not changed, and it has to. It just has to, unless we're okay with it. Yeah, and I don't think we are.
So
I think you're absolutely right.
We went on strike, Dylan. Class sizes are still horrendous. Absolutely zero more funding for SEND. They're still suffering massively. What else didn't change? Was that it?
For me, workload. It's not changed.
Well, no. We had that. There's a policy, mate. I can read it. We read it out on this list. There's a reduction task force.
So there's two things. There's two things going on here. I think more than 50% of educators, if you went and spoke to them, I'm predicting here, over 50% of educators, teachers, wouldn't know what you were talking about if you mentioned the workload reduction task force list, right? Because I know this, or I don't know this, but I'm making this presumption because of the amount of people I've asked, have you heard about this? And the overwhelming majority say, oh no, they don't know about it. It's not been made into it's been slipped into the report. It's been slipped into the contracts that we might have as teachers, but it's not being implemented whatsoever. So there's two strings to the workload bow. Okay, that administrative task thing we're talking about doesn't have anything to do with planning and marking and stuff. So let's just park that for a minute.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
The administrative side, it's brilliant that we've got this list back, which by the way existed. Just going to say that again, but we've got this list back. It's not being implemented. That's first up straight away. No. Okay, one thing in the list that it says teachers should not be expected to do to try and avoid burnout and excessive workload. One thing on the list, displays. I've not spoken to a single person one-to-one in any school where they don't have to do displays anymore.
Has anyone reached out to you and said, my school, we used to do loads of displays and now we've got a new policy that says we don't have to do them at all?
No, I've seen online one person say that their school went down the route of no displays at all now because of it. Right. I've seen that online. What I'm talking about is in my engagement through listeners, through Instagram, through just people that I've seen, like friends that I've got that work in different schools. I've not heard one person say that they now don't do displays.
They've not talked about a change in their school.
No, it's still an expectation. It's the exact same. So this administrative list is cool. How much of an impact has that actually had though? So you're talking about that's something the strikes got us. I'm now saying, okay, cool, it got us it, but what's it actually changed? Minimal.
And do you know why? And do you know what? So I'm quick to blame the school sometimes with this sort of thing, but with this, the reaction I've had from people who maybe have different opinions to me is, okay, who's going to do it then? And when I don't have an answer to that question, because there's no funding to get someone else to do those things, I am always stumped and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's broken. The government needs to give us more money. We can't do this. We can't stop doing this list of stuff without the money. Because you know what the irony is there? Because if we could, we probably just would have done that already anyway. If we could just stop doing those things, like, are we that babyish that we need the government to say, stop doing these things?
Well, do you know, it's funny you should ask that, because I think in some situations we are as a profession.
Do you think?
I really do. I really think, for example, that there's a bit of martyrdom in teaching sometimes. And there's stuff that we could do less of immediately that we just collectively don't, because we say it's what we've always done, it's what needs to happen, this is the policy. I hate that as an answer. Whenever anyone comes back to an answer of why have you not done this? Oh, because I did X, Y, Z instead and I thought that was more important. If ever the answer to that is, well, it's the policy, that's not an argument. What do you think I'm going to say to that?
Change the policy?
Change the policy then, because the policy's wrong. Just because it's written on a piece of paper saved on an area somewhere and you've got the school badge on it, doesn't suddenly mean it's okay or acceptable or correct or right or the thing we should do. So that's just not an argument to me. Because I just like I said, come back, change the policy then. And it is with some of the administrative stuff, like, for example, displays, okay?
Yeah.
Keep the same display for a year or two.
Yeah.
You know, there are some people in the school who go, there are some people in the school who will go, oh God, that display, it was the same as last term. We've got to change it. Stop. Why? Is it because we've just always changed it every term? Well, that's not a reason.
Yeah.
We've got a list of stuff we don't have to do now. Have you got other stuff that you'd rather go and do? Oh yeah, you've got planning to go and do. Oh my God, go and do your planning. Oh, you've got marking you've got to do because that's the policy of the school. Well, that trumps making a new display for a display that is absolutely fine, that you just in your head have decided needs to change now because it's what we've always done. That's where we need to take control a bit more, and SLT need to take control a bit more and just say, we're not going to do that then. Yeah. I agree.
You've all been on strike. We'd like to action the fact that workload was a huge problem and loads of teachers are quitting because of it. We accept that it's really serious. Here's something we can do. The perfect situation would be we get more funding and we employ a resource manager who comes in and does our displays for us. That would be great. We don't have that money because the government don't actually want to fix it. So what we're going to do as a middle ground, because we really care, is you don't have to do this anymore. Rather than changing your displays once a term, we're just going to ask you to change them once a year, and we're going to give you a day out of class once per year to do that. There you go. We've changed the policy, we've changed the expectation. Hopefully that makes you enjoy your job a bit more.
Which is still a compromise, because it would still be fair enough for a teacher to turn around and say, but I don't have to do them. It's literally in this list. Who in their right mind as a teacher would actually do that? I think not many.
No, if you've been given time out to do it.
Exactly.
It's a bloody job. Get on with it.
I completely agree with you. So yeah, if there's time out to do the job, I do pretty much anything in the school.
You've got to remember that sometimes. I think we get a bit entitled sometimes as teachers. It's like, you are actually being paid to be in this building though. So do you know what? If your manager has said to you, you're not in class today and you're doing this really boring other job, that's what you're doing.
That's what we do because we're human beings as well. The other day I mentioned we did some pizza cooking, right? The floor was a mess. It was a mess. It was like 5:15. The floor was a mess, right? I've been my right to walk out, I'm sure. But what person would do that? I went and got the Hoover at 5:15 and I hoovered my room. I'm not above anything. I'm not above doing a display. Don't think that teachers have this attitude of, well, I'm above this. It's not in my payroll. I'm not going to do it anymore. No, we're just fed up of years and years and years of expectations. And it's showing itself sometimes and people being like, no. But really, we are human beings. We're going to do whatever we need to do in the classroom. We're not above anything. We're just workers, employees, like everyone else in the building. I'll hoover. Of course I'll hoover. Yeah. Of course I'll do a display if you give me time out in the morning to do it. If you don't know, you've got a choice to make. Yeah, I'm either going to mark these books or I'm going to do the display because I'm already doing stuff outside of school.
Yeah, I'm not doing
I'm already doing my out of directed hours for planning and marking.
But going back to your original point, you're right. The martyrdom culture, and I know I've mentioned this quite a few times in the episode, it does kill me. It really kills my soul. Like, I struggle so hard to interact with people because most people I know are in that culture. Like, realistically, most people don't sit here on a podcast and have a good moan, or don't go to school and try and change things. They generally just crack on with it and be like, well, it's got to get done. You know, most people I'd say are martyrs to this job. Yeah. And I find it really tough because I can't get through to them. I'm just sort of like, we literally went on strike. Like, that's how passionate we were about changing this. And now you're not even willing to just be like to have a debate about whether you should do this work or not, and you're just going to take workload home like every day and every week, and like I don't know, the martyrdom culture needs to change, and it hasn't changed, so that's still there.
Yeah,
I'd say people still think they should live and breathe the job.
Yeah,
and that's the only way to be a good teacher, because that person told you online. Remember, you're only a good teacher if you
I know.
live and
don't,
breathe.
Don't, because they live rent free in my head.
No.
Living rent free in my head. Yeah, and do you know what? Let's just get to the macro level here. I suppose a couple of big things that we can just list off. Public perception, I don't think has changed. If anything, it's got worse.
Yep.
How much we actually care about that's down to each teacher, I suppose. Teachers are never going to be the most loved profession in the world because of the optics of us having so many breaks and holidays.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Okay, I'm not going to change the mind of the public. I didn't actually expect the strikes to do that either.
No.
Brilliant. I'm not attributing that to the strikes failing. Like, if anything, it did its job. If people thought we were worse than ever before, cool. We're getting the message through that we want to do less. Funding in general. I know we've touched on it. Everything runs through funding. That we need more than we'll ever get.
Yeah,
and I don't think we'll get it.
It's too broken.
It's too broken.
We're not even trying. I feel like
there's
nothing's happened yet, has it?
No.
Really, with funding, it's not really happened.
The pay rise this year or last year was fully funded.
Fully funded, yeah.
So cool. You got the extra. You didn't have to take it out of other. But that's great. I'm not actually out to try and not take money from my budget though. I'm out to increase my budget for these things. You saying to me that teacher pay rises are outside of having to take stuff out of school,
and everything else is still dire.
But that's the baseline expectation. Of course, my pay should not be taken out of the SEND provision or the Breakfast Club provision or the iPads that we need to learn and produce work with the children. Like, that's just the baseline. But it's been seen as an amazing thing all of a sudden. What? It's funded? Isn't that fantastic? What you want? Yeah,
one of 50 things that needs to be funded.
Yeah, literally.
Let's get to the big one.
Yeah, okay.
Let's get to the big one. One of the biggest reasons people were striking was to make a stand and make a point because we are losing teachers. Like, we have a real retention crisis. People are quitting, and you know what? People aren't signing up either. So we have a recruitment and retention crisis, and part of the strike was to be like screaming at the government, this needs to be fixed. So what are your opinions on that? Has that changed? Is recruitment and retention in a different place to 2 years ago, in your opinion?
No, I think if you look at the numbers, I think it's tracking pretty much as was. It's not really shifted either way.
Right.
I don't think it's got lots worse. I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think the 6.5%, 5.5%, the starting salary has been increased. I think that's helped a bit with recruitment.
Yeah.
But I don't see at all how retention's been helped whatsoever.
No.
And really, if you really want the huge impact, of course, we need people through the door. We need amazing young teachers.
Yeah.
There are so many incredibly young teachers. So it is 50-50, this problem. And I think recruitment still needs a lot of work. But I think that was the first step to increase, get it in line with graduate jobs.
Yeah, it was like, we're going to recruit this many more new teachers.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe we'll talk about that, but I'm not sure that's still working, But I can come from it from a retention point of view.
Sure. Being
a teacher who's done it for just about 10 years now, I am no different whatsoever, in my opinion, having gone on strike to now. My opinion hasn't remotely changed on where I am in terms of should I stay in this job forever?
Yeah.
Should I continue with it? Is this so I've got to, right. If I'm thinking about whether I'm going to stay in teaching or not, and if I'm thinking of retention is fixed or not, I've got to ask myself, is it worth putting myself through this every year in a system that I think is completely broken, that I think no one is seriously actually trying to fix, that I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle every single day when I'm saying, this is not working. I don't want to do that because it doesn't help my kids. This helps my kids. And if I do that as well, I'm going to end up being completely burnt out. And I'm already mentally burnt out because I can't help the children in the way that I want to, because I don't have the provision or the funding to do so. So I am at the point where I'm just think to myself, I've lost this game. I'm trying to play this game. I'm trying to fix stuff from the inside. I'm trying to crack on and bang on, but literally nothing is changing. And the machine is too big and I can't fix the machine. So there's two options. I break myself staying in the machine for the next 10, 15 years of my life, and I just become a robot, just
hoping
please change. Or I leave. If I leave, I'm admitting defeat. But I think that's the only option, because either way, nothing's going to change. So I've got to put myself first.
Wow. Yeah. That was deep.
I think that's true, though. I really do. I hate it. I hate that I'm in that position. I really resent it. I actually get down about thinking about it, that I don't know what I can do as a person.
You're very, very, very competitive. And I think that has a big part to play in your minds, because I think for you, you know, this podcast for us is a way of us trying to help fix it, trying to say, hey, we need to stand up together to do this thing, right? That's a lot of the time. That's what we're trying to do with this podcast. And yeah, you're right. The idea that it's doing nothing and nothing's changing because it's too broken and there's too much martyrdom still, and we can't seem to get through to enough people to actually have an impact and stand up unified and be like, hey, by the way, we all agree none of us are doing this anymore. So either change your policy or fire all of us. Good luck. You know, it's kind of at that point. And it's depressing when it's been, you know, nearly 2 years and it's like, yeah, absolutely nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing has changed.
So that's why I think, going back to your 5%, I actually think that was generous.
Yeah,
I really do. I think the reason is part of that 5% talking about the money. Okay, we're saying what the strikes haven't done, right?
Yeah,
it hasn't remotely increased my purchasing power or got it back to where it should be based on the years and years of this job because of inflation.
Yeah.
I'm still poorer at the end of every month than I was when I went on strike because of inflation, because my mortgage has gone up, because my food bill has gone up, because my energy bill has gone up. All of these, I'm poorer now than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah, you've got less spending
power. It didn't even do that, which we're saying is a good thing. I don't have as much money as I used to have. That's a big thing for me because that means my family get less things. I'm less likely to go on holiday. I need that time when I have my school holidays to go away and do something. Oh, what's that? Holidays are twice as expensive and you have half as much money left over at the end of the month. All right, I'll just sit in my cave for a week and wait to go back to school then. Honestly, I don't. It's completely broken and I don't think it's changed at all. And I'm just like, cool. If we did all of that, right, that was the biggest bit of collective action we could have possibly done. So many teachers I know agreed to go on strike, right? If you didn't agree to go on strike and you think it's fine, that's your prerogative. I think you're wrong, but whatever. Loads of teachers did choose to go on strike because they wanted to make a change. The amount of those teachers who right now are just shrugging their shoulders and saying, well, we'll crack on. We tried. If we can't even get that level of support from people on the ground, then what can I do? That's my personal opinion. What can I do then? I can't even get these people to have that level that they had when they went on strike. You chose to go on strike, but you can't even bring yourself to do what I see as a much lower threshold of just not doing something.
Do you know what the irony is now? And maybe this is where your brain is at, right? The way you're describing this to me, and I do feel very similar, by the way, is that we're kind of at the place where we now have a choice. We can choose to be a martyr. Yeah. Because we know it's not changing. So if we stay in it, if we stay in this machine, we're martyring ourselves because we know it won't change. So we're choosing to do something even though we know it's bad. Or we leave the machine, which we don't want to do.
Well, I want option 3, which is to fix the machine.
Yeah.
And what is just getting me so down and in the front of my head constantly is I can't do it. I don't have the resources or ability to change the machine.
No. And
that's what I want to do. So it winds me up because now I've got 2 choices out of 3 that I don't want. And I've got to pick one of them. And at some point, you've got to pick yourself. And I've been so honest on this podcast a million times. I feel like I'm on the road to not doing this job anymore.
Yeah.
And when that decision is made, ultimately, because it will be at some point, I don't know when, the reason I'm hanging on to this job so much is because I bloody love it. I want to help the children and I love teaching. But I know that there's going to be a point in my life, and I don't know when that point is, that I will decide to quit teaching. And that makes me sad. I don't like it. I don't anticipate that. I don't love it. There's a lot of people quit teaching. They're like, oh, I can't wait for that day that I can quit. I don't want to quit, but I'm going to because it's not working. It's broken. It's just an industry that is not going to be fixed anytime soon.
Wow. Well, thank you for your very honest reflections. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think we should leave that segment there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Should we play the jingle and then talk about, okay, realistic then, what's the one thing we change?
Yeah. All right, Dylan. So I think we accept that funding is not on the cards. It's not happening.
Yeah.
But you seem passionate about change still. You want to see that change. What can we do then? What's one thing that we could still do? Do we have to accept defeat, or is there something we could do, even without money, to help fix this broken machine?
It's linked back to what we've been saying. I think the strand anyone listening probably thinks they already know what I'm going to say. It is the attitude and culture inside of schools.
Right.
I think that could be really powerful. to make a change. It's got to be collective. It has to be collective, else it won't work. Even if half your staff are choosing to not do something and say, no, we're going to draw a line, but the other half are doing it still, it just creates a divide in your staff team.
Yeah.
It's got to be from the top down.
Yep.
It's got to be collective. It's got to be from the people in charge of the school, as well as the people from the bottom being willing to say no. If we can change that culture and attitude and honestly actually start whittling down workload and looking at what's taking people loads of time and having an open and frank conversation with each other. I know so many teachers who talk to each other a lot and moan a lot between each other about how much work they've got to do outside of school, where the SLT genuinely have no idea that's a thing. And it's not even the SLT knowing it and turning a blind eye, which I think is bad. It's not obviously not the SLT knowing it and pushing it and saying, tough, you've got to do it. It is honestly a bunch of people in leadership who simply do not know the impact that certain policies and planning and marking is having on teachers.
Yeah.
Open up that dialogue, talk about it frankly, all be on the same page that we're going to actually reduce it. And from the top down, tell these people it's okay for you not to do this.
Yeah.
Don't just assume that some people, because they're martyrs, some people, to this job, and they will not cut back unless you tell them that's not part of their job anymore.
Yeah.
If they still want to do it,
celebrating it.
Yeah, if they still want to do it, fine. But have an open and frank conversation about attitudes, having a culture inside of your school. It doesn't matter if a display has been the same for 2 terms.
Yeah.
Who cares? And if you think that's important, something else knocks off the list.
Yeah.
I want you to go and do this. Cool. You're either going to get time out or I don't expect you to mark this week.
Yeah.
And that's okay because I'm telling you this as someone who runs the school. I'm not going to point to a policy. I'm not going to say it's what we've always done. We're actually going to change how we do stuff from the inside, and it costs nothing.
I'm going to add one thing to that. I'm going to challenge one thing you said, which is you said about the person who is a bit of a martyr. If they really want to do that, then fine. I think that needs to stop as well.
Do you think?
I think so. I think it's actually quite a big factor.
But what if someone at the weekend just simply wants to have this display for what they're doing in their English that week, and they want to do it and they enjoy doing it on a Saturday?
Yeah.
Would you tell them no?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it depends what the boundaries are, to be fair. Like, you made up a particular boundary there. I just think whatever the boundaries are that your school agrees, like, we're going to make a change by doing this thing. Sure. These are the new boundaries. I just don't think you should let anyone go out of it anymore. I think it has to be, like, quite draconian,
so
quite strict.
You're putting a ceiling on above and beyond?
That sounds harsh, doesn't it?
Yeah. I disagree.
But honestly... Yeah, I think if we actually want to see change, it's what's got to happen. Because I think what happens currently is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I think people do have the attitude, but they're like, but not me though. I'll still do the work. And then I think subconsciously, even without them realizing it, it is then impacting their expectations they have on everyone else. There's still going to be that tiny bit, and everyone's a bit smug. There's going to be a tiny bit in their head where it's like, well, I did do 8 hours of the weekend every single weekend this weekend. I think I can ask my staff to do one bloody display. I do think that's where it's going to get to. And I think until we say, nope, you're not allowed to do it anymore. You're not even we're not even like rewarded for that anymore. That is, you are setting a bad example. It doesn't work. No one's going to respect their own time if they look at you, whoever this person is, whether it's from the ground all the way up to the head teacher, and they look at you and you're saying one thing and then not remotely living it. I think people are going to think it's a test. People are going to start adding loads of layers to this of, well, they do loads of work. They're telling me not to do it. They're going to think I'm a bit of a... Are they
testing me?
They go above and beyond. If I actually want to get to that role because I want to work at my career ladder, I probably should mimic them and do as much. I just think there's so many layers to this where I'm like, it won't change if one person is preaching it but not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. I'd be quite harsh with that and stop celebrating it and actually start like pulling people aside and be in the same way that you'd be pulled aside, right? If you didn't do something, you probably won't get a disciplinary, but someone would say something about it and make you feel a bit like, oh, okay, recreate that feeling when someone does the opposite. When they're saying, yeah, when these are our boundaries now and we're trying to create real change, and then they completely ignore it and don't do it. Pull them aside, be like, don't thank them for doing the work. So, you're kind of setting a bad example here. We've got these boundaries for a reason, and you're constantly breaking them. You're breaking our new policy, and it is impacting other staff. Like, you got to stop doing this. What can we do in school to make this job better for you?
I'd still thank them and
get everyone in the boundaries.
Yeah, it's interesting.
If they can't do it,
it feels wrong what you're saying, but I completely get the logic.
Yeah, I know, and I'm being extra harsh right now. I do get that I'm probably exaggerating more than I would really do.
Yeah,
but
sure.
My point
you're
here
making
is,
the point.
you've got to like practice what you preach.
Sure.
And if you're really serious about changing it, then you wouldn't look at that person and go, They chose to do it. You look at that person and go, why did they end up having to do work outside of work time? Something's still broken. Let's fix it. Come into this meeting. Why did you have to do work at the weekend? Oh, well, I couldn't actually get it done in my hours. Okay, we need to change that then, don't we? We can't just say you can do it if you want. We need to change it so you can comfortably get all of your work done in these boundaries that we've set. It can't be that some people choose to do it outside. Because actually, really, they're not choosing. They've got to do it outside.
And then suddenly in a staff meeting, this person's done this. Oh, it's been amazing. So can we all do this, please? Not really.
They did it outside of their boundaries.
Not really. Yeah.
I don't know. Good point. I'm probably being over the top here.
Okay, so throwing it back to you then.
Yeah.
We're going to live into a magic fantasy world now. But you can only pick one thing that you get funding for. So you do get some funding. You do actually get some funding for this.
Yeah.
But we can't do everything we said on the list, obviously. One thing you would do with funding that you think would have the biggest impact on teachers thinking, this is a job I can actually do then. Thank you.
Like workload, basically.
Yeah.
I would... It's got to be money for people. It's got to be people. You've got to employ people to help reduce the workload. Otherwise, how is it going to reduce? Right? If I've got 19 admin tasks to do...
that have to get done.
They have to get done. You could maybe look at making them more efficient. You could knock off a little bit of that time, but they've still got to get done. They're still going to take time, right? You need someone else to do it then. Because
there's a choice you've got to make between more people in the building or do less stuff.
Yeah.
And I think most average Joes who look at education, whether they're teachers or not, will say, well, we shouldn't do less stuff for our children. We shouldn't do fewer things. That's awful. Of course, we should still do everything we can for the kids.
Okay,
sure. Okay, cool. Well, then with funding...
employ someone else then.
Right, okay.
So we have an administration person. I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
It depends what
resource manager, like you talked about. A few trusts.
All right, they put... I've worked in school where they had that before. It's like, okay, you want to get a display up? Cool. Tell that person what you want, they'll do it.
Yeah.
We've employed them to do it. There you go. It didn't take any of your time. It took 3 minutes because you had to go and tell them what you want.
Yep.
Rather than 3 hours.
Yep.
Okay, great. There's 3 hours cut. And now, do you know what? Your school can have a policy. I want some nice new displays each term. It's like, okay, cool. It doesn't take me any time because you've employed someone to do that. All I've got to do is manage it. That's fine. That can be part of my role. Please, could you put this nice math display up? Thank you. Cool. There you go. But just someone to do that. So I think if we had a bit of money, and our primary goal was let's reduce the workload of teachers, I would say, cool. Employ more bodies in the school and give them roles which take away admin tasks from teachers. Done.
Yeah. I think I'm going to lead on from that in terms of with funding.
Yeah.
The people is vital. Is vital. And it's for this reason. I'm going back to the first thing I said, SEND.
Yeah.
SEND support is completely broken. Completely broken. And if we had a few £1,000 spare that we got from extra funding, I would put it into SEND support. I honestly, as a teacher, feel completely helpless when I'm trying to teach a class of 32 children and I have in that class 3 EHCPs. And then let's not forget the whole string of children who have undiagnosed issues that are in the system that's already broken as well. So we have our external factors coming in and affecting teaching where children do have needs and are not even been diagnosed yet.
Yeah.
So in your class, there are always children, and you don't need an official diagnosis as a teacher to know what a child needs to help them learn.
Yeah.
It's good to have, and it's necessary sometimes because it's then enshrined that the child needs that support and it's vital. But I'm not going to ignore the other children who clearly one of them has ADHD when they're on the pathway right now, but they haven't got an HCP or a diagnosis yet. I'm not then going to be like, oh, okay, they don't have the ADHD, I've got to leave you to it then. You don't have ADHD until it's written on a piece of paper. Of course they do. And I feel completely helpless as a teacher when I'm stood on my own in front of 32 children and I have, let's say, 8 children in the class who have a very specific need where I need to be with them to fulfill that need. And if I'm with them, not only am I ignoring the other children who need my attention, who have AHCP plans, who have issues concentrating or can't write things down on paper or can't record their thoughts in a certain way. I immediately can't help them. I then also am just ignoring the rest of my class who just crack on and need a teacher to help them to learn stuff as well. It is impossible to teach 32 children on your own with SEND needs in your class to an acceptable standard where everyone gets what they need.
Yeah.
It does not happen. We pretend it happens. We like to say, oh, we do all this cool stuff. We have all these things in place for everyone. It's not hitting the needs of all the children.
No, not properly.
If you want to properly hit the needs of all the children, exactly where they should be all of the time, then you need to be honest about that. It's not happening and get funding. It's the only way around it.
Money to support.
And if someone's listening to me right now, because I know some people are listening, go, oh, That's one awful teacher who doesn't meet the needs of all the kids in their class. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think, because this is the truth. And the only reason I'm talking about it or passionate about it is because I desperately want to meet the needs of all the children in my class. I need to. It's my job, and I literally can't do it. Imagine being a mechanic and your job is to fix the engine and you need this part, but you do not have the money to buy the part.
Yeah.
And someone walks in and says, have you fixed my car? And you go, I've polished it. It looks nice. I've put an air freshener in and I replaced that bit, which was okay, but I've kind of just gone over that a bit.
I've got this other part that kind of looks like it fits. So when I hold it here, looks pretty fixed, right?
And the engine runs a bit.
I'm just gonna hold it here endlessly. That's what I'm gonna do. That's it.
Oh, but you do have 7 other cars that people are coming to collect today.
Can't, because I'm holding this piece so that everyone thinks I fixed this one.
Yep.
I tell you what, I got another arm. I will hold this one here as well. Look, I fixed 2.
You have got 6 left.
Wow. I'll tell you what
and by
I'll
the
do.
way, there's another 30 cars that just need a quick shine.
Right, listen, what I'm going to do is look away for a second. Oh, look at these 2 over here now. I fixed them, haven't I? Don't look over there, though.
What about the one you just had?
You're not looking that way, though, are you?
Exactly. And to me, that is an analogy that genuinely works, because it is as impossible as that, and it doesn't happen. And until we get funding and people on the ground and help, it's going to continue to not work.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, you're passionate. And I hope that comes across. You're passionate about it. You could just not care.
Yeah.
You could just not care, rock up to the job, genuinely not care, and then go home and get paid.
Yeah.
Do we want teachers like that? Is that what we want? Like, do we want teachers to do that? No, what we don't want is you leaving the profession.
Well,
because you actually care. Genuinely, you do really care. Like, I know we joke about it on this podcast a lot, and we take the mick out of each other.
But I think we always show that we care.
No, I agree. But you are someone who I've always known that you seriously like care about the kids, and that's never changed with you. You know, even if you get grumpy of the system, you have never ever like faltered in how much you care about each individual kid in your class, and I think that comes across.
That's good. That's nice.
Which is good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just want to help them. I just want to help them.
Yeah.
Let's call it for the episode.
Yeah.
That's a nice little chat. I enjoyed that. I hope people get a lot out of these chats, because, you know, it is heavy actually talking about this stuff. Like, it is actually a big conversation to have. And I think sometimes I forget that when we sit down to the podcast. I'm like, oh no, I am like, you know, literally putting all of my internal thoughts completely on the line for other people to listen to. So if you have listened to that and you connected with any of it, or you think, yes, that's true for me, or even if you had a contention with anything that we said, do tell us, because I'm, you know, me and Hayden are not putting ourselves on the line, but we are really just saying exactly what we think. And we really love it when people tell us what their opinions are as well.
Yeah, big time.
Nice one. Follow us on Instagram, guys, at Teach Sleep Repeat Podcast. Please leave us a review. It helps us a lot. We've gone past 100 on Spotify. Woohoo! It's amazing. And thank you for listening so much. The numbers keep creeping up. So we appreciate you guys.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.